For 5 long years, I quietly paid my 82-year-old neighbor's monthly medication copay at the local pharmacy, completely convinced he had no idea I was doing it. The morning after his funeral, his estranged daughter showed up on my front porch with a probate attorney, holding a legal notice and accusing me of financial elder abuse. Derek Vance, an attorney in a tailored charcoal suit, stood on my top step with a leather briefcase, while Victoria, a woman I had only ever seen in dusty framed photographs, glared at me from behind sunglasses on an overcast Tuesday morning. "Mrs. Miller," the attorney said, his tone clipped, "we are here regarding Arthur Vance's estate. My client has reason to believe you exerted undue influence over her father, leading to unauthorized financial transfers and a radical alteration of his last will." Victoria stepped forward, her voice dripping with hostility. "My father lived on a modest pension, Clara. Yet over the last 5 years, thousands of dollars vanished from his accounts, and suddenly you're named as a primary beneficiary? You were just a neighbor. You had no right." I stood in my doorway, gripping my coffee mug so tightly my knuckles turned white. For 5 years, I had walked 2 houses down every single month, slipping into Miller's pharmacy to cover Arthur's heart medication so he wouldn't have to choose between taking his pills and heating his home. I had done it in absolute secret. I had never asked for a dime or a word of thanks. And now, standing on my own porch, I was being treated like a thief by a daughter who hadn't visited her father in over 7 years. "If you're going to stand on my porch and accuse me of taking advantage of a man I cared for like family," I said, my voice steady, "then step inside, sit at my dining table, and look at the truth." 6 years earlier, none of this would have made any sense to me. In the spring of 2020, I was 58, recently retired after 30 years as a school administrative assistant. I lived alone on Elm Street. 2 doors down lived Arthur Vance. Arthur was 82, a retired clockmaker who spent 40 years repairing mechanical pocket watches. He was a quiet, stubborn man who spent afternoons sitting on his front porch. When his wife, Martha, passed away in 2017, something inside Arthur seemed to slow down. Arthur possessed a pride so deep that offering charity felt like insulting his dignity. He would rather freeze than ask anyone for help. I discovered his struggle by accident in November 2020. I was at Miller's pharmacy picking up my prescription when I overheard Arthur at the counter next to mine. Mr. Miller, the local pharmacist, was speaking softly. "Arthur, the copay on the heart medication is $65 this month." Arthur's hands trembled as he reached into his wallet. He pulled out 2 $20 bills and a 10, counting them slowly. He stared at the cash, his shoulders sagging. "I'll take half the pills for now, George," Arthur whispered. "I'll get the rest next month after my check lands." "Arthur, you can't skip doses," Mr. Miller warned. "I'll be fine," Arthur insisted, pulling his posture upright. "Just give me what $45 covers." I stood 2 feet away, heartbreaking. My own father had been a proud man like Arthur, suffering in silence rather than asking for help. After Arthur gathered his small paper bag and limped out, I walked up to the counter and handed Mr. Miller my card. "Put the rest of his prescription on my card," I told him. "Package it up so he gets his full monthly dose. Just tell him there was a regional senior subsidy. Promise me you won't ever tell him it was me." Mr. Miller hesitated, then nodded. "All right, Clara." And so it began. On the 3rd Tuesday of every month for 5 years, I quietly settled the copay balance on Arthur's prescriptions. It averaged $65 a month, roughly $4,000 over 5 years. I never mentioned it to Arthur. When I brought him fresh, baked bread, or stopped by his porch, we talked about simple things. The weather, the high school football team, the old grandfather clock in his hallway. I convinced myself the entire beauty of the gesture relied on his total ignorance. I believed if Arthur ever found out, the embarrassment would crush his pride. I was completely wrong. The first hint of something deeper came in the summer of 2023. I was sitting on Arthur's porch on a warm July evening when his landline phone rang inside. Arthur didn't move, resting his hands on his wooden cane. "Arthur, your phone is ringing," I said softly. He shook his head. "It's Victoria. It's always Victoria when the caller ID flashes an out-of-state number on a Sunday evening. Isn't that a good thing?" I asked gently. Arthur let out a dry laugh. "She calls every 6 months, Clara. 4 minutes on the clock. She asks if I've thought about selling the house yet or putting her name on the deed. Then she says her dinner reservation is ready and runs." He turned his pale blue eyes toward me, showing the raw ache behind his stubborn exterior. "When Martha was alive, Victoria called every week," Arthur murmured. "Once Martha was gone, I guess I became a chore she didn't have time for." I reached over, placed my hand over his weathered knuckles, and stayed silent. What I didn't know was that 3 weeks after that conversation, Arthur took a taxi downtown to the legal offices of Sterling and Associates. He went alone, carrying a manila folder under his arm. The second major shift happened 6 months before Arthur passed away. It was a chilly evening in October 2025. I had stopped by with vegetable soup. Arthur was sitting in his armchair near the fireplace, looking frail, though his mind remained sharp. Beside his chair sat a heavy brass-bound cedar box, an antique clockmaker's toolbox he had restored decades ago. "Clara," he said, gesturing toward the box. "Take this home with you tonight." "Arthur, what is this?" I asked. "Not tools anymore," he said quietly. He pulled a small brass key on a leather string from his shirt pocket and pressed it into my hand. "Keep this in your house," he said, looking at me with intense clarity. "Do not open it. Keep it locked in your desk." "Arthur, why?" I asked, feeling a knot in my stomach. "Because one day, after I'm gone, someone is going to come to your door demanding answers," Arthur said softly. "They are going to accuse you of things you didn't do and try to rewrite who I was. When that day comes, use this key. Open this box in front of them and let me speak for myself." I took the box home, placed it in the bottom drawer of my hallway desk under old linens, and tried to forget about it. Arthur passed away peacefully in his sleep 5 months later in March 2026. His funeral was small. Neighbors, the pharmacist, and Victoria, who arrived 30 minutes before the service and left immediately after. Which brings us back to that Tuesday morning on my front porch. Victoria and her attorney sat at my dining room table. Mr. Vance laid out financial statements. "Mrs. Miller," Vance said. "According to bank records, Mr. Vance withdrew precisely $65 less each month than projected medical expenses required. Yet his pharmacy records show his accounts were paid in full. 3 months ago, his updated will was filed, placing $120,000 into a trust managed under your name." Victoria slammed her hand on the table. "You coerced him! My father would never leave money to a neighbor over his own daughter!" Looking at Victoria's angry face, my fear evaporated, replaced by absolute clarity. "Wait here," I said quietly. I walked down the hallway, pulled the heavy brass-bound cedar box from my desk, and set it down in the center of the dining table between the legal files. I laid the small brass key next to the lock. "Arthur gave me this 6 months ago," I said, looking at Victoria. "He told me not to open it until someone came asking questions. He said when that day came, I should let him speak for himself." Attorney Vance looked at the box, then at Victoria. "Go ahead," I told him. "Open it." Mr. Vance inserted the key and turned it. The latch clicked open. He lifted the heavy cedar lid. Inside lay 3 items: a leather-bound ledger, a sealed legal envelope, and a handwritten letter on cream stationery with Victoria's name written in Arthur's precise cursive. Attorney Vance opened the legal envelope first. "This is a certified mental competency evaluation," he said, his voice dropping. "Conducted in July 2023 by Drive Richard Hayes, Chief of Geriatric Medicine at County General. It certifies Mr. Vance was of sound mind and under no duress." Victoria stiffened. "What? There's more," Vance said, pulling out a second document. "A sworn affidavit from attorney Robert Sterling. It states Mr. Vance initiated all revisions independently, explicitly leaving his daughter Victoria the house and real property, while creating a dedicated community care trust funded by his savings." Then Mr. Vance picked up the ledger and flipped open the front cover. Glued to the inside cover were 5 years' worth of pharmacy receipts, dozens of them, organized by date. Beneath each receipt, in Arthur's handwriting, was a note, November 2020, paid by Clara Miller. She told George to lie about a senior grant. She thinks I don't know. March 2021, paid by Clara. Cold snowstorm today. She brought hot soup so I wouldn't walk out. August 2022, paid by Clara. She never asks for anything. She keeps my secret so I don't lose my pride. January 2024, paid by Clara again. God bless that woman's quiet heart. My breath caught in my throat. Tears welled up in my eyes. He knew. For 5 years, Arthur had known every single time I walked into that pharmacy. He knew every lie Mr. Miller told him. He knew every dollar I spent out of pocket. Instead of feeling embarrassed, he had quietly documented every act of kindness in his ledger, keeping my secret just as faithfully as I had tried to keep his. Mr. Vance slid the cream envelope across the table. "I believe this is for you, Miss Vance." Victoria's hands trembled as she unfolded the paper. The room fell completely silent as Victoria read her father's final words. Halfway down the letter, her composure shattered. She put her hand over her mouth, a shaky sob breaking from her chest, and dropped the letter onto the table, weeping into her hands. Attorney Vance picked up the letter, looked at Victoria for permission, and read the final paragraph out loud. "Victoria, if you are reading this in Clara's house, it means you brought a lawyer to fight over what I left behind. I left you the house because it was your mother's, hoping living in it might remind you of what family used to mean. But the money in the trust goes to Clara, not as payment, because you can never put a price on human decency, but to establish a community fund in your mother's memory for seniors who cannot afford their medicine. Clara gave me 5 years of dignity without ever asking for credit. You gave me 4 minutes on the phone twice a year when it was convenient. I do not write this to hurt you, my daughter. I write this so that before you judge a stranger's kindness, you finally look at your own silence." Victoria sat weeping silently. The anger that had fueled her journey was gone, replaced by the weight of missed years. Attorney Vance closed his briefcase. "There will be no legal challenge, Mrs. Miller. The documentation is airtight, and the intent is crystal clear." He stepped outside onto the porch to give Victoria privacy. Victoria stayed for another 20 minutes. She didn't argue. She asked about her father's last days, whether he suffered, what music he listened to, what he did on those long afternoons on the porch. I told her everything. I told her about his pride, his love for pocket watches, and how he never stopped keeping her childhood bedroom exactly as she had left it. When she stood up to leave, she looked at the box. "Can I keep the letter?" she asked quietly. "Arthur wrote it for you," I said gently. "It's yours." She wiped her eyes and walked out into the morning air. Today, the community fund Arthur established pays for prescription copays for over 30 seniors in our town every month. Miller's Pharmacy handles the distribution, helping people maintain their health without losing their dignity. I still walk past Arthur's house every evening. A young family bought it from Victoria a few months ago. They repaired the porch steps, repainted the front door, and planted fresh yellow roses along the fence. Sometimes, when the evening air is crisp and the streetlights flick on, I look up at the front porch and smile. I think about an old clockmaker who spent 5 years letting me believe I was keeping a secret from him, when all along, he was crafting the most beautiful, timeless lesson in quiet love I would ever learn. If this story touched your heart and reminded you of the quiet kindness in the world, please take a second to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. Sharing these stories helps us keep real human connection alive. Thank you for watching, and leave your thoughts in the comments below.